What's going on, people? It's your boy Kelechi back with another episode of the Ramblin' Mind Podcast. How are each and every single one of y'all doing today? Man, I hope you're doing all the things you know you ought to do during these times. And I hope you're a lot warmer than I am right now because it's been raining all day. I am cold. I'm slightly sleepy because it's been raining all day. But anyway, in this video or in this podcast, what we're going to be talking about is two charts or two graphs that I saw last week that just kind of ruined my entire week. Like, I saw it and it just set me off. I saw these two charts from Ben Carlson, who's one of my favorite blog writers. His blog is called A Wealth of Common Sense. And I could not believe what I was reading. But I'll show you the two blogs. By the way, I wrote an entire newsletter about this. I wrote an entire blog post about those two stats that I saw, about those two charts that I saw. If you want to check it out, you can check out the link in the description, or you can just go to KelechIwuaba.substack.com. There's a link down in the description as well, or in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast. But anyway, so the two charts that I saw, the first one just talks about how U.S. households is broken down into the who owns what assets and who owns all the debts. And the first chart, as you can see on here, it breaks down like the net worth. I wasn't really paying attention to that one too much. I just saw the breakdown of assets. If you look at the numbers, if you just added these up, over 70% of assets are owned by the top 10%. 70% owned by the top 10%. Now, when you look at liabilities, debts, and all those kind of things, the bottom 90% of people or 90% of households own about 75% of all liabilities. All debts are owned by the bottom 75%, while the top 10% own almost all the assets, about 70% of the assets. I was like, what? How is that even possible? Why should that even be the case? And then when you look at the second chart, which is a breakdown of the assets and what assets each household own the most of, you look down here, it says that stocks, 10%, or the US household top 10% owns about 90% of all stocks. 90% of all stocks. Now, of course, that number is going to change over time. Now there's a lot more access into stocks nowadays with things like Robinhood and all of these things. Everybody basically has a stock investment account nowadays. So there's a lot more access, but that number is still incredibly high to think about. Now, on the other side, when you look at real estate only makes up about 44% of their total assets that they own. While the bottom 90%, real estate makes up about 55% of all their assets. Of any assets they own, a large majority of real estate breakdown is owned by the bottom 90% of households. That is insane. That is incredible to think about. And when I saw all of this, it sent me up a wall. The main reason for this is, as we all know, we hear the saying all the time, a house is an investment. A house is an investment. But when I look at this, when you look at the breakdown of the debts in the United States, we have about $16 trillion worth of U.S. household debt. And 11 trillion of that comes from just mortgages. It comes from just mortgages. And when I saw that, but for the wealthy, for those who are wealthy, for those who are doing well for themselves, they don't have that much of their money stuck in real estate. They have more of their money stuck in the stock market, stock in businesses, stock in other things. And yet, most of the time, we are told a house is an investment. We are told a house is a great savings mechanism. We are told that it's for savings. It's a great way. We are told that most people build their wealth through owning a house. And that just kind of sent me off a wall. And I went on a whole tirade. Like, at first, I just did a whole Instagram story thing where I was just posting picture after picture after picture of different things just to break it down. And then somebody commented that came at me, and then I just went off. Like, I was so mad. I started going off and going back to back. I created 3 different TikToks and Instagram reels just on this topic, just going back and forth with people. But then I came to a realization you're not going to convince anybody about anything by having Instagram reels, or even convince anybody by going through any kind of reasoning. Because at this point, it's no longer like a logical equation. It's no longer logical reasons why this has just become part of our culture. Like, culturally, everyone will tell you a house is an investment. Culturally, we've adopted it. And so there's no way like one random dude coming on this podcast is going to convince you of anything. However, what I do want to do in this podcast is just to talk through why I think a house is not an investment. But more importantly, is also to give you my context and to help you understand where I'm coming from. And more importantly, just to share with you some of the things to think about when you are thinking about buying a house and why you should probably not think of it as an investment. And you should definitely not make it your largest money thing. Like, you shouldn't use your life savings to buy a house. Like, I don't think that's a wise decision to make, but I'll break it down to you why. Now, if you want to see the numbers to back up some of the arguments that I'm going to make, or the numbers to back up some of the things of why I think the way I do, check out this blog post that I wrote recently. That this blog post that is called Homes Are Emotional Investments is actually going to go out on Wednesday morning. And so you can check this out and read the whole thing and see like some of the numbers breakdown that I do to show some of the hidden phantom costs that nobody really talks about when it comes to owning a home. Everybody just thinks about the principal price of owning the home, though they never actually talk about all the other costs that come into when you're actually the landlord of your own property. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but I do a whole breakdown and talk through it just about this whole thing. So if you want to check that out, again, the link is down in the description and in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast. But using myself as an example of why I say the thing about a house is not an investment, as a 28-year-old, one of the worst things that I've done recently is actually buy a house. A lot of times people think that when I say a house is not an investment, I'm saying don't buy a house. No, I'm not saying not to buy a house, because that would be hypocritical of me, because I definitely did buy a house. But when I look at it from a financial standpoint, this was probably one of the worst mistakes that I made. And I say that because of two main reasons. Or not mistake, but rather decisions. One of the worst financial decisions I could have possibly made. And I say that for two main reasons. The reason number one is it removes my flexibility. And reason number two is opportunity cost. What do I mean? So when I talk about it removes my flexibility, a house is a very illiquid asset. In order for me to, let's say I wanted to move all of a sudden, I got a better job somewhere and I wanted to move out of Atlanta. In order for me to sell this house, it's going to go through a lot of different processes before I can even find a buyer for the house, especially considering the economy that we're in right now. And then all the different hoops and things that you have to jump through to be able to sell the house, all the people you have to pay for stuff, all the fees, all of these things. A house is a very difficult asset to sell off. It's very hard to get rid of it. And when I say flexibility, I mean like flexibility in not being able to do the things that I'm used to doing, and not being able to have money just sitting around that I can use for other things. Now I need a larger emergency fund. I need to make sure that if anything happens to the house, I'm available to take care of it. It's always on your mind of what are the things that I need to take care of in the house. You can't just do whatever you want anymore. You always have to think about, oh, I have to take care of my lawn. I have to take care of those windows. I have to take out the trash. I have to clean my gutters. I have to do all of these different things that you normally would not have to think about, which removes your flexibility. It removes a bit of the freedom that you think that you get when you buy a house. When you buy a house, you don't just get freedom. Freedom comes with responsibility. What you're buying is a responsibility that you're taking up on yourself. So that's one. The second one is opportunity cost. As a 28-year-old, I know that if I invested my money for the next 30 years, I'm going to 4x my money. That's just like with 10%, every 10 years, if you use the rule of 72, every 10 years, my money will double. So I'll say like over the next 4 years, my money is probably 4xing over the next 30 years. But instead, I chose to buy a house, which means I'm costing myself possibly hundreds of thousands towards millions of dollars if I had just invested it. And that's just thinking about mortgage payment and monthly payments. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that now I need a bigger emergency fund in order to take care of anything that happens in the house. By having my money just sit in a savings account rather than actually actively investing the money in the stock market, I am losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, some people will be like, oh, the house can appreciate and you can get that money back. The thing is, like, when you look historically, when we look in the last 40 years, a house has returned about 3% return on real estate, 3%. When you look at the stock market, that is 10%. That is a thing of 6% delta between what I can be getting in the stock market versus what I can be getting for a house. And for those of you who understand compound interest, that's a massive gap. That is a massive gap. 1% makes a massive difference. And so being able to get almost 6% more that I could in the stock market versus if I just had the house, that's a massive opportunity cost that I'm giving up. Plus, there's just money that I could be using for, maybe I want to travel. Maybe I want to buy a new car. Maybe I want to do other things. All of a sudden, I can't do those things anymore because I have given up that opportunity by choosing to buy the house. This is some of the things that are not shared. These are some of the things that are not talked about when it comes to buying a house. Now, I say that this was probably one of the worst financial decisions I made. However, there are other investments. There are other types of investments that we don't regularly talk about. There are emotional investments that we can make. And for me, a house is an emotional investment. A place that is your primary residence is not necessarily a financial investment because by the numbers, it's not necessarily going to make sense. However, from an emotional perspective, it can be one of the greatest, if not the greatest things that you can do. Why? Because a house provides security. It provides stability. It lets you know what your monthly cost will be every single year for the next 30 plus year. When I say monthly cost, I'm just talking about mortgage payment and interest and your mainly mortgage payment. When I say that, because then you can take that and compare it to rent, which that can change every single year. Every time you have to renew your lease, you're probably going to get your rent increased. And that can suck. And then, you have to go through the whole thing of like, oh, now I have to move to another location because it's now too expensive over here. And that can be a pain in the butt. When you buy a house, you're like, yo, this is my mortgage payment. I know I'm going to have to make this mortgage payment every year. Now, notice I didn't say your insurance will, more than likely during that period of time, your insurance is going to go up. The different costs on the house, just owning the house, will definitely go up. Taxes on the property will go up. All of these things that most people don't actually think about, which makes it that it kind of with rent versus mortgage kind of wipes each other out and kind of balances out because everybody just focuses on one number. When you factor in taxes, insurance, all these other things that go into your mortgage payment, it's going to go up. It's going to go up year over year. You're not running away from prices. Inflation is still a real thing. It's going to go up. But anyway, point is you have a place that you know that you're going to be in. It gives you stability and it allows your mind to focus on other things because now you can think of other things when you have a house. The other thing that it provides is it provides you emotional joys of gatherings. One of the best things about having this house right now is I can host people, but more importantly, it's my siblings. Whenever they need a place to stay in Atlanta, they're just like, yo, I'm coming to town, and they just pull up. Or if they're traveling and flying out of Atlanta, they're like, yo, I'm driving to Atlanta. I'm going to leave my car with you, and then they can go. Having the ability to provide that kind of area for my siblings, for friends. I mean, I just had a couple of my friends stay with me over the night because they needed to do something in Atlanta and they didn't want to get a hotel. I was like, yo, come through my house. There's a free room. There's a free bedroom. Spend the night, all that kind of stuff. Or in one situation, they had to stay overnight and I had to travel out. I was like, yo, stay the night, lock up, do all the things you need to know, you need to do, and then do what you need to do. Boom, done. Having the ability to help people in that way is something that I enjoy a lot. It's something that I am excited for when it comes to owning a house. And for some people, a house shows freedom. Now, to me, a house, when people say freedom, they mean they can do whatever they want in the house. To me, that means more responsibility because freedom doesn't come free. There's responsibility that comes along with freedom. So to me, it's like, oh, that just means I have to figure out how to do my lawn, clean the windows, wash the house. Yes, you got to wash your house. You got to use the power washers and wash the house down. You got to do all of these things. If anything breaks, it's on me. But other people think of it as like, yo, I get to decorate my own property. I get to knock down walls to make the house what I want it to be. I get to do all of these things. So it gives people freedom to be who they want to be. And for all my entrepreneurial people out there, a house is great. You can leverage it to be able to buy you other things, to be able to invest in other ways. You can rent out rooms in your house and put a little bit of money in your pocket. You can your taxes, you can tax deduct different things when you own a home. It's a good hedge against inflation. Having debt can be a great hedge against inflation. So there are benefits to owning a house. But the main thing that I want to share with everybody is simply this. The prevailing wisdom in society tells us that a house is an investment. I choose not to believe that wisdom because what I have seen is there are phantom costs that make it one of the worst investments that you can make. However, if you look at it from the side of an emotional investment where you say, you know what, I know I'm going to be spending all this money to upkeep and take care of this house, but I don't care because there's a benefit that I'm getting out of it that is not just about dollars and cents. If you're making that decision, then I applaud you because you're thinking past just what everybody else is thinking about. You're thinking about the benefits that it brings for you. However, even saying all of that, you still must run the numbers to make sure that it makes sense for you. Do not just buy a house because, it's going to be nice and it's going to be good. I can do all these decorations. No, run the numbers to make sure it actually fits your life. And then decide for yourself, not based off of what a real estate agent told you, not based off of what somebody else told you, but what you are actively deciding to do and saying, I will buy a house because I think for me, it is the best investment I can make, whether that be emotionally, whether that be financially. And if you can make it work financially, maybe you're the type of person who's like, I'm buying a house because I'm going to rent out all the rooms. I'm going to house hack this thing. I'm going to be making money off of this bad boy. And then I'm going to leverage it for something else. But before you buy a house, do not do it just based off of, I heard. There's a lot of people that made that decision all of last year. And I thought that after 2021 and seeing how house prices are coming down and a lot of people are in houses that they regret buying, I thought that from those lessons, there will be a lot more people who are like, a house, I got to be careful. But yet, it's still the same things I get in my TikToks and on my Instagrams where people are like full on like, no, a house is the greatest investment you can make. It's like, not necessarily. So just be careful whenever anybody comes up to you and says, a house is the greatest thing ever. You need to go rush out to buy a house. Just be like, you know what? I'm going to make that decision when it's time for me to make that decision, all right? But anyway, I hope y'all learned one, maybe two things out of this entire thing. I hope I was able to share some wisdom. If not, I apologize for wasting about 18 minutes of your time. But I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. And I hope y'all have a Merry, Merry Christmas in case I choose not to record any more podcasts the rest of this year because I get lazy and I'm in full-on vacation mode. But anyway, I'm going to catch y'all up on the next one. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. God bless each and every single one of y'all. And if you enjoy this podcast, share it with one person that you love, one person that you hate, and one person you're just kind of like, about. And by that time, you to share it with every single person that you know. But anyways, it's been your boy Kelechi. I'm going to catch y'all up in the next one. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. God bless each and every single one of y'all. And we out. Peace.